So like some background, but like not much. So in reality, I'm a psych major. So I did psych here, graduated in 14. So it's been almost like a decade or so before I started. But since then I've worked in like various positions in the college access space. So I've almost hit like every touch point that you almost could have with a student. But then later in my career, when I, transitioned to academic advising, I started advising technical students, and so specifically with like STEM. And so over the past couple of years, like almost like 5 years at this point now, I've been working with students, and I've been like hearing all the jargon and whatnot, and like seeing the landscape of like where students are landing and the kind of careers they have. Like I see that there's a need for having people who have that liberal arts background to transition into the STEM. So it's a space where everybody's growing together, not that it's just kind of lopsided in one area. So I read this book called Robot Proof. And after I read Robot Proof, I'm like, oh, this is the lane that I want to be in. And when I saw DTI come up, or the Digital Transformation Program, I was like, this is it. So that's what kind of led me today. It took me a while to kind of cook on it, because like for most psych majors, like go to the psych route. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be most happy in that area. So let me find something that I'm going to be able to do what my skill set is, but then do some other stuff too. I would say the multidisciplinary background of like the people in the program. So I'm a psych background, and so it's super helpful for me to be able to like have a place I can apply my knowledge in the classroom. But I have people who are in there who are coming from a variety of different backgrounds, like finances, those who are coming from pharmaceuticals, those who are coming from higher ed as well. And so like we're all kind of coming in with our areas of expertise, but we're also learning from every experience that everyone else is having too. So I think that's a true strength of the program, is that like we all are going to kind of get to the goal at the end of getting that degree in digital transformation, but we're going to get the chance to see so many different ways that it can be applied, and then take all the as a peer of mine used to say, take all the meat of like all these experiences and then just leave the bones. And so we're walking away with like years of experience in multiple areas that we didn't have to actually go in ourselves. So that's phenomenal. I would say that in the program, my favorite moment is kind of like actively happening. So we do have the opportunity to have like, courses that are together that meet in person, but also courses that are going to be online and abroad for those who are not going to specifically be in like the Flint area. And so in my class, my DTI 505 course, which is the Change Leadership course, that course has just been phenomenal from start. Like that is where we get to have a lot of interaction. Some of my courses have been asynchronous, which have been able to give me a lot of good content, but based on my background, I'm really flourishing in having the community in the class, and we're building community really quickly, which is almost a little outside of my expectation of how like attached I was to my peers, and just being in the program for a couple of weeks at this point, and we're still in the class together, and like every class is a true delight. I would say the thing that's most surprising is kind of like the piece that I talked about before, is that, just how much experience is coming into the classroom and how many different areas that we're coming from. And I think that also that's kind of a myth that I thought, because the program is seated in a technology or a STEM college, you would think that you have to have an extreme background in these subject areas. And while it's good to have some experience in it and feel comfortable in some of the subjects that we talked about, you don't need to be an expert, because that's what the program's going to do. It's going to give you the areas of expertise that you kind of need. And so like that is something that I thought that was like, I was a little apprehensive about when I applied for the program. And then once I got into some courses, I realized you don't need to have a computer science background. You don't need to be an engineer. You can kind of develop those skill sets. But if you have those, you can also build on what you already have. Being here, I really like being in the USIN. I mean, the USIN is really the heart of campus, and so that's good to be able to be around other people, but also it's a great place to attend events. So like, even if you're just coming in to like head to the library, you'll find something cool that's going on. Like there was an event that happened a couple of weeks ago that was the motorsports event for the department. So that was phenomenal and amazing. I always try to stop by the Intercultural Center too, because that's a really nice space that feels like home. And so that's a good place to stop in. And then, the other places that people hit, the library, the gym, those are all cool places. But the USIN typically is the place I make a destination when I come. It goes back to like that leadership course that I'm in right now, which is the DTI 505 course. It's just like the conversation with our peers. Like a couple of weeks ago, we had conversation around some things that are going on with mergers, and so how those are applying. So we talked about how Norwegian itself is buying up a couple of different companies, but we talked about like how does that happen, what goes on behind the scenes, and then also how to track trends of like how these things manifest. How do people feel about that? And so we're still seeing how that one's going to play out in real time, but we're also being able to critically look at like what were the trends, how do people perceive the previous changes that have happened with this group. And so I think that was super cool because it actually shows us how to sit down and think about how change happens in an effective way, and then also how to use the patterns to map out where change is and actually meet people when the change gets to that point. And then also talk about people, how they are on board and how their participation is in change. And so like that right there was like when the light came on, like multiple light bulbs came on at that point. I was like, oh, this makes so much sense, and it directly correlates to kind of some of the work that I've had too. We just recently submitted a project that was interviewing change agents around our different spheres. And so my peers, we all interviewed someone who was like close to us. I interviewed one of my supervisors and then also a chief engineering officer at new labs in Detroit. And just to hear how they navigated change was like phenomenal, because it showed me what my change styles is and it was a little bit of both of theirs, but then also how much different it is. And then like the tail end quote for both of them was like, it was mind blowing, because one person shared that sometimes you're put in a position where you have to make change where you're not navigating the change. And they said that their quote was that sometimes you get responsibility without authority. And how do you navigate that when you are responsible for making sure the changes, but you don't get to have like the final say? And then the other interview talked about how when you are a person who is involved with change, sometimes it feels more appropriate to like let your life be put on pause while you're making change. And he said, in reality, you need to make sure that your life is moving forward, because sometimes that'll give you the motivation to get the change done. And that's something that you typically don't hear in textbooks around those two pieces. Like, hey, this is how you make change happen. It's like, but when you're in that space, how are you supposed to feel? How are you supposed to navigate? And so like for that was really cool to have an opportunity to go out and see how it's applied, and then how to review and critically analyze it in a way that's going to be helpful for the class and getting a good grade, but also in a way that's going to be able to give me some nuggets to myself to kind of impact my change style. I would say I've only taken two. So I would, I'm going to be greedy and say both of those professors are my favorite professor. Obviously, Dr. Donaldson is amazing. The way that she structures her class and she talks about it. Professor Neji, who's taught two classes I've taken actually, she has a really good, comfortable online distance method that helps you to feel like you know what's happening at all times in the course. She's super responsive, because I emailed her a couple of times and she got back to me really quickly. But then also I feel like there's good content that's in there, and her lectures, while they are covering a lot of information, they still feel like there's a lot that's still in there. So like when you pick up her lecture, you're figuring out like you're learning things. She goes off her slides, but she adds a little bit in there too. So that's helpful to kind of feel like you're just not going through the slides. You could just skip the lecture. You're actually going to be able to get something out of it. I think the CIT has really blossomed and grown into something that is a force on campus, or is shaping itself to be like a large force on campus. It's hard to kind of get a true vibe of like, what every sector of CIT is, because our program is more distance learning. But I would say that the vibe of our program is that, it's attracting people who are go-getters. And so that's really helpful, because it's one of those iron sharpens iron type of deal. And so we are all making each other better. And I think that's a beautiful space. And that's a space that probably anybody who wants to grow should be in. So I think that the vibe is like, this is a destination. This is a place that people should try to come if they haven't already factored that in, and then figure out like how to kind of grow into the profession they're trying to become, because that's exactly what we're doing in real time. And it's a space that's nurturing us and providing us an opportunity to grow. Because sometimes people say like, hey, you can come and grow here, and then you realize like you've outgrown them really quickly. I don't feel like that's going to be the case anytime soon. I think there's going to be continual space for me to continue to grow in this program. I would say do it, make it short and simple, but I would say this is a good program. For me, it took me 10 years to figure out what I wanted to do. Like coming from a psych background, I knew that psychology was really important. That was going to be embedded in everything I wanted to do, but I had already been practicing it somewhat in the career field I had been in college access, but I wanted a way to kind of plug that in differently. And this program allowed me to kind of figure out and fill in the gaps of the things that I didn't know I wanted to try to get to a goal at the end. So this is a really good program to be able to leverage your current skill set to get to where you're trying to go, while also being an asset in the space that you're going into. So for prospective students, definitely try us out. Talk to the faculty, talk to current students, because everyone is super warm and welcoming, and like this the beautiful thing about UM-Flint is the fact that like we're a smaller campus, we're a hidden gem, but we're also very accomplished and then also very knowledgeable too. So like, if there's something specific that you want, all you have to do is ask. And there's plenty of people here who would love to help and support. So, reach out to us, talk with us, figure out what it is that you want to do. And then after you've done that, come and join us. So for me, I really am taking into like the study of like what Joseph A. Owen calls humanics. And so that looks at how to bring liberal arts into technology or bring technology closer to liberal arts. And I think that that's a passion of mine. And so I really want to be able to go in and work with people to kind of get them a pathway into technology, because I think that that's the biggest barrier. Like some people just can't see themselves in the field. I'm like, the field is kind of building itself around everything that we are at this point as a society. So there's a space for everybody, but figuring out what your space is, I think that that's going to be critical. And like, there's going to need to be some stewards who are going to be able to get people on. And I think the digital transformation program is kind of set up to do that in a variety of different ways. Like there's 3 different tracks. So like there's a track for like quality and smart manufacturing. There's one for data, and then there's another one I think for finance. And so those are key areas that people are going to want to know how to do more. Working with technology, how to change their organizations. But also that's going to give a lot of people an opportunity to kind of jump into the system and find a place that they can flow in. So I think that for me, I'm finding that my space is kind of wanting to do like, that facilitation. I'm learning how to do that. But also it's giving me the opportunity to kind of not know what I want to do and to pick up a lot of other skills. And so I'm super excited to be in the program, but also I'm comfortable in knowing that I don't know everything I need to know, and I'm going to get there, and that's perfectly fine.
When do you graduate? I'm just curious.
The plan I think is fall 2027, or at least that's my personal plan, but by winter 2028 at least. I think like with some of the new programs in CIT, the issue is the strength. It's the fact that like it's something brand new that people are going to love, but like people just don't know how to get to it. So with this program, I feel like this is like the entry point. Like if you are looking for a space that you want to be a part of the conversation, you want to be able to contribute, because that's exactly what I'm using it for, then this is the time to kind of jump in, especially when things are new, because people don't know what they don't know. They'll know in about 10 years or they'll know something. But if you want to be at the ground level, if you want to be a pioneer, like you want to join into a program that's relatively new that a lot of people don't know a lot about, because you're going to have the ability to grow, learn information, and then also to kind of define what that program is going to be too. And like, you don't get to do that too many times in a lifetime. And so if people want to do that, like this is almost all new at this point. I mean, you got those established programs that came over that, that have been around almost since the dawn of time, but you've got the new ones where offsets and concentrations out of that. So those are super important. Those are the areas that are designed for people to jump in wherever they are. But it's just getting people to know what's going on.